The Anthony Joshua versus Charles Martin fight has just been confirmed today. The vast majority of people think Anthony Joshua is just going to blast out Charles Martin in a few rounds. And then there's some other people that think Charles Martin, with his size and his southpaw style, is going to be awkward and actually give Anthony Joshua his first knockout loss. Tyson Fury is famously one of them people, and to be honest, I don't really see where Tyson Fury is getting this from. There is quite a lot of information about Charles Martin out there. You can see how many amateur fights he had. He had 65 amateur fights, which is 22 amateur fights more than Anthony Joshua. And despite having more amateur fights and more amateur experience, he's not achieved anywhere near as much as Anthony Joshua in the amateurs. Charles Martin's best accomplishment as an amateur was a runner-up for the Golden Gloves Championship, where Anthony Joshua has won a silver medal in the World Championships and then an Olympic gold medal as well. And when it comes on to the professional records as well, Charles Martin has a draw, and it's against a guy called Alvaro Morales. Now what's interesting about this draw is, even though it was 3 years ago, Alvaro Morales is just a fat 6 foot, not even a journeyman. He's got a really bummy record of 6 wins, 12 losses and 6 draws. Now, can anyone seriously see Anthony Joshua having massive problems with somebody like that? If Anthony Joshua was fighting someone like that, even in the first few fights, people would be expecting him to knock him out in the first, second or third round very easily. So that draw does matter in his record, even though it was 3 years ago, because Charles Martin did have more amateur experience than Anthony Joshua. Also, when you look at Charles Martin's record, Charles Martin's best real win is a guy called Rafael Love, and it's the only top 100 opponent Charles Martin has beat. And Rafael Love is just ranked in the top 100. He's ranked 97th in the world. Now, a lot of people might say, well, he beat Glazkov as well, but it's not real. It's not a real win. If you watch the Glazkov fight, obviously Glazkov had a knee injury in the third round, and it was scored officially as a draw up until then. So you can't really take that away as a win. He could easily have lost that fight. And the interesting thing as well about Rafael Love is a common opponent of both, obviously, Charles Martin and Anthony Joshua. And the difference in their performance against Rafael Love is just night and day. Rafael Love gave Charles Martin a tough fight. He went 10 rounds with him. It was Rafael Love's stamina that gave him problems at the end. He could not defend himself, and Charles Martin just overwhelmed him with his arm punches until Rafael Love got stopped. When Anthony Joshua fought Rafael Love, it was just a complete mismatch. It was a completely different fight. It was a complete mismatch. Rafael Love could barely land a glove on Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua just knocked him out in the first half of the second round. So that's a very good way of comparing the two of them. You can actually see their performance difference there by looking at that fight. And the interesting thing is, Anthony Joshua has fought 4 opponents ranked higher in BoxRec than Charles Martin has. I mean, Charles Martin's only fought that one guy ranked in the top 100. Obviously, Gary Cornish, Anthony Joshua beat. Kevin Johnson, who had never been stopped before, Anthony Joshua stopped him in the second round. Dillian Whyte, a very good fighter, could be ranked in the top 20 in the future. He just needs to develop his skill more, but he's got a good punch, solid chin, aggressive, hungry. Now, if you watch both of them when they're fighting, Charles Martin does have more skill, I would say, than Dillian Whyte. Charles Martin's obviously bigger than Dillian Whyte as well, at 6'5" with a 80-inch reach. But he's still smaller than Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua has that inch height advantage over him, 3-inch reach advantage. And Charles Martin could make that up if he had extra speed. But Anthony Joshua is faster. He's got the faster hands. He's got more snap in his jab than Charles Martin as well. The thing that could give maybe Anthony Joshua some problems is what gives a lot of boxers problems, and that's the fact that Charles Martin's a southpaw. But I can see Anthony Joshua being thrown in with the best southpaw sparring partners that they can possibly afford at the time, and I'm sure Anthony Joshua, even though he's never fought a southpaw as a professional, he's probably fought some very good southpaws as an amateur, obviously going into the World Championships and the Olympic Championships. Charles Martin does obviously have some power. He is a power puncher. Yeah, I mean, he could catch Anthony Joshua with a good blow as well, just like Whyte did. But the difference between Dillian Whyte and Charles Martin is Dillian Whyte's far more aggressive than Charles Martin. He's very much more in your face. Charles Martin likes to try and set up that powerful left hand of his. He'll throw the jab and he'll go in and reach in with that straight left and try and knock out his opponents. He really favours that left hand of his. He's not so much as a combination puncher as Anthony Joshua is. He doesn't tend to go to the body as much as Anthony Joshua does as well. Charles Martin does have better footwork than Dillian Whyte as well. That's quite noticeable when you watch them. Dillian Whyte looked kind of off balance in the Bryant Minto fight. He says he was injured during the Bryant Minto fight, kind of believe him there. And he did look off balance quite a lot in the Anthony Joshua fight as well. Charles Martin does have power in both hands. I've seen him, even when he tries to set up that straight left, he does have power in his right hook. He's very good. I've seen him knock out a few opponents with that right hook as well. So is Charles Martin more dangerous than Dillian Whyte? He probably is. He's bigger than Dillian Whyte. He's a southpaw. He does have power in both hands, where a lot of people just think Dillian Whyte had power in that one hand. He's got better footwork. He's got more experience as well. I mean, that draw, even though I can't see Anthony Joshua having that same kind of draw against a bummy opponent like that, it was 3 years ago, and you got to give Charles Martin the benefit of the doubt. His performance has been at a far higher level since then. So this does have the potential to go into the later rounds again. Charles Martin could take Anthony Joshua further than what Dillian Whyte did. Can I see Charles Martin winning this fight? It's possible he could win this fight. It's possible Anthony Joshua could have problems with his southpaw style. But personally, just by watching Charles Martin and watching Anthony Joshua, I think Anthony Joshua he has a bit better footwork. He's a better combination puncher as well. He's a better counter puncher than Charles Martin. He's far stronger than Charles Martin. He punches harder. Clearly, you can see from the Rafael Love fight than Charles Martin as well. He's a better defence than Charles Martin, even though Charles Martin has good defence himself. Anthony Joshua is better at parrying punches, blocking punches, rolling the punches off himself. Yeah, I see Anthony Joshua being the far superior boxer in this fight. And I think even though that Charles Martin will take Anthony Joshua a few rounds, I see Anthony Joshua KOing Charles Martin in the 6th or 7th round of this fight. So that's my prediction for this fight.